Hey everyone, welcome back to Right and Rustic. This week we're going to go from an empty truck bed to my dad's new Christmas gift of this. And welcome back to the inside of my shop. First I'm going to take you through the hardware that's going to be used for this. The whole system is going to run on steel tubing and skateboard wheel bearings, which you can see here. I'm going to push it through the sides of the cabinet, put on a bearing, a couple washers, and a nut. And the most important thing here, I think, is to use all stainless steel hardware. This will prevent corrosion over time. If you've been following my videos, then you know that I had 3 pieces of square tubing from my last build. That was intentional so that I could have 2 pieces for this project. Let's get my apron all loaded up and get ready to start building this thing. First, I have to get some sheet goods. You can't quite see it all in this shot, but all materials that are required are 2 sheets of plywood and 2 pieces of square tubing outside of the hardware itself. Alright, now I've got all the strips cut to make up the bottom bed liner grid, I'll call it. I'm going to move on to what's called a story stick. And this is oftentimes a good little template or trick you can use when you're making something for a template. And so while you can measure all you want with a tape measure, there's nothing quite like having an exact representation of what you're building. So this was laid inside the bed liner, and I marked at each location something like the wheel well, or the back of where the grid's going to go, and the front. And I'll use this when I lay out my grid panels to exactly align them where they need to be for the finished product. Alright, now that I've got my pocket holes all drilled out, I've got a small bead of wood glue, exterior rated, where it's going in the back of the truck, and exterior rated pocket hole screws. So let's put this thing together. This is also where it's a very good idea to use the clutch on your drill. I've got that only set at 8. Because you don't want to overdrive these pocket hole screws, especially into a plywood material, because you'll definitely split the ply. Now what you're seeing here is more of what I'll likely call real world measuring. That's holding actual pieces up to the application and drawing or measuring off of that. And here's a look at all the materials that we require cut to size. Okay, now let's mark that square tubing to the proper length and give it a cut. I don't work with metal very often, but it's important to take proper steps here. So I've got the square tubing mounted to the outside with some clamps. I pre-drilled, and then I'm going to tap home some self-tapping metal screws. These are 5/16 in diameter. Here I'm preparing to drill the final bearing position, top and bottom. I thought it would be a good idea to have a 1/8 spacer, but you'll see that that was a mistake, and that you actually want your bearings to be exactly tight to the square tubing. Unfortunately, I made a template and I drilled all the holes with the spacing, but I did have to go back and take the spacers out and re-drill the top bearing lower. Once everything was drilled appropriately and tested for, it was time to move on to speaker carpet upholstery. Again, upholstery is new for me, so I kind of learned as I went along, but it seems pretty basic like most things. Basically wrapping a big Christmas gift. So here I'll hit it with 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. This stuff is a miracle worker. Spray on both sides of what you want to connect to one another and give it maybe 10 seconds to tack up, and then you can put on your fabric or whatever it is you're looking to apply. Personally, I think the most important thing and takeaway from upholstery work is probably just making sure that it's pulled tight enough. Really, I have lots and lots of staples, but none of them are going to be seen when it's mounted to the bottom frame. You might recall those bearing holes. Here I'm just poking a nail through so that I can feed the bolt through the hole. As I recommended at the start, you can see I'm working with all stainless hardware, and I'm putting on some blue or medium thread locker so that this won't come apart on me. The bottom frame will be visible when you open the back hatch of the truck, so I'm going to give it all 2 coats of exterior rated black paint. Now listen closely here, this is a great tip. Rubber at my local store sold by the foot was $10, but this entire mat was only $30, and I think it was 72 inches long in the end. So some basic math will tell you that that was a great deal. In no way, shape, or form can I take credit of what you see me building here, and I'll explain that in the next clip. All right, so things are coming together really nicely on the drawer. It's time for the locking mechanism, and just like Neil did on his drawer over on Past Makes, his locking mechanism is hard to beat. He completely designed that himself, and I've incorporated it into my design because it's pretty well foolproof. So the next thing to do is actually put a bolt through so that it can actually latch on to the bolt and stop it from coming out of the side. So we'll move on to that now. I use this trick often where I do 5-minute epoxy from my local dollar store, and I will actually epoxy in a nut inside of the edge of the wood, and then it'll be locked in place forever and I can thread in a bolt. All right, this is the final test. It's always a little nerve-wracking, but if this goes in all the way, then I can move on to putting the top on and finalizing a few things. The drawer should go in almost 3/4 of the way, very smooth, and then it should require a little bit of force to get it over the final bearing, which I've mounted about 1/8 of an inch too high, and that's almost a secondary lock in addition to this. So let's give it a try. Perfect, and that's what we want to hear right here. That lock in place. So that can't come out now, which is great. Now I can design a faceplate for this shelf and then the top. All right, let's get outside and get this thing done. Okay folks, the back of this cabinet is going to be held down by a ratchet strap to the tie-down points on the left and right hand side of your screen there. I'm going to use O-rings to place the strap through in order to keep it in place from sliding off. If you remember that nut that I epoxied in place, here I am just putting a bolt through the nut as a catch so the drawer won't come out all the way. Come all the way out?
Yeah.
So the main point of this was for my father to access his tools and groceries at a nice comfortable height at a full 6-foot extension. Well, there we go. It's a cold, windy morning here in Nova Scotia, but my father's Christmas gift is all done, and now it's time to go deliver it.